Material for the brain. Conversations for thinking bodies. In this show, together with our guests, we explore different ways in which we can develop a meaningful relationship with our bodies and minds and respond to the current state of the culture in a quest for more integrated and embodied perspectives. Hello and welcome to Material for the Brain podcast. Quick note before we start, our application for the Movement Lab study group is officially open, and if you're interested in learning with us in person, you're welcome to check on our website. And we will have also an open day for our study groups in Vienna on the 13th of June, which is a great opportunity to come and meet us in person, experience classes with our team, and also learn more about the different programs we offer. Okay, my guest for today's episode is Ohad Interator, who is a certified physical therapist, an independent movement practitioner, explorer, dedicated to teaching, helping and empowering people to live more fully within their bodies. His interests are rooted in discovering and developing better models for movement, health, and well-being with a human-centric, holistic approach. Ohad has a diverse movement background. He's a graduate of philosophy studies from the Tel Aviv University, an ecotherapist, and an owner of a clinic in Tel Aviv where he teaches classes, workshops, and courses on a regular basis. In our conversation, we spoke about his childhood experience with bullying and how it informed his relationship with his body and set him on a path of embodied exploration. We talked about his current perspective on health that spans over three major areas: relation with oneself, relation with others, and relation with the environment. We talked about particularisation when working with people and how to align it with general principles, and much more. As always, share your comments and thoughts with me in whatever format you find best for you. And now I bring you Ohad Interator. Hello, Ohad, how are you? Welcome to my podcast.
Hi, Matan. Thank you. I'm happy to be here with you.
Nice. Where do I catch you? Where are you speaking from?
Actually, I'm speaking from my own studio. It's in my house in Tel Aviv. I'm living here with my wife and two daughters. We are here for about 12 years in this house, and this is actually the small room. It's my own kind of clinic studio that I work from here. And yeah, I just finished two online classes that I was teaching, and this is like where I am right now.
And what are you busy at the moment in your professional, personal life in this period?
Actually, I just opened a new course lately. It's the first time that I opened this course. So basically, in my profession, I'm a physical therapist, and I also practice movement, and I teach movement in a more broad perspective, and with more aspects of health and well-being. And right now I just opened a new course. It's about anatomy and kinesiology course that I teach. So it's a new thing for me, and it's kind of working well. It was I think yesterday was the second meeting, and yeah, so I have my own people that I work here in the studio. It's kind of a clinic that I work with the people one-on-one. And I'm having online classes, and I have workshops and courses that I open from time to time. And lately, I'm more and more busy. I wouldn't say busy, but interested. I would say interested in bringing back movement back to nature and connect people with the movement and nature, and taking more movement outside and creating this connection between movement and ecology and things like that.
Wow, a lot of things to talk. So maybe we can start by, if you don't mind, to introduce yourself a little further to the audience, or maybe to tell a bit about your background, where are you coming from, and how did you end up doing what you're doing, and describing a bit more in detail what are you offering, working around the topic of this topic that you've mentioned?
Yes, great. So I was born in a city called Rehovot. It's a city that is about, I think, 30 kilometers south of Tel Aviv. And I was living there until the age of 20, more or less. Since my early childhood, now I can see it in retrospect. I had a deep passion to the sea. I liked to surf. I had my boogie, and I really liked like sports. I started with table tennis in the beginning, and some karate, judo as a child. At around the age of 11, I think my parents got divorced. And during that time, I was dealing with some bullying in my neighborhood with some older guys. So I had the sense that I should somehow learn how to protect myself and how to, to learn some kind of martial art or, self-defense stuff. And then I looked for some stuff, and then I reached a studio, not a gym, a dojo. Yes, the dojo is the name. A dojo in Rehovot, and I was there for 10 years, and I was really centered around that. It was kind of the center of
What
my
kind of
life.
martial art?
Sorry?
What kind of martial
What kind
art?
of martial art? It was called Meijin Kai. It's kind of like I would say full contact karate. It had elements of Shotokan, some elements of judo, things like that. Yeah, it's kind of like a full contact karate mainly. So I did that until I think 22, something like that. When I finished the army, I served in the Navy. And then I thought, about the next stage of my life. So I decided to go and learn philosophy in university. So I did my first academic degree in philosophy and general studies centered around Southeastern Asian philosophy and psychoanalysis and things like that. And it still has a big impact on my life. Like I think for today, let's say, what I learned as a physical therapist later on um, is not, I would say, is not more impactful than my studies in philosophy before that. So it's a core component of what I do and of who I am. And then in that time, I kind of started to teach to teach like aerobic kickboxing. I just went to some classes and I saw that I have like the rhythm and the movements, and I kind of started to teach it in a gym that I was a member at. And I met some people and I learned from them. And then I think my first, let's say, yeah, the first thing that really opened something for me was a back injury that I suffered. I was about, I think, 26, maybe, almost 20 years ago. And then I remember that I started to feel some, radiating pain into my hip and to my leg, and I didn't know what's going on. Like I was a martial artist. I did movement. I went to the gym, things like that. But I didn't understand how the body works. Nothing about anatomy or biomechanics or things like that. And I started to have this radicular pain, and it got more and more severe. And then I was diagnosed with two herniated discs, and it was a very hard year for me this year. I had to stop teaching kickboxing because I couldn't produce a kick. And now you know me, and sometimes we're talking about my range of motion and my, this kind of stuff, which we can talk about more later. But at those days, I couldn't even take my head, put my head down to brush my teeth, not even to talk about, lacing my shoes or something like that. It was impossible. And then I started to learn from a guy named Paul Chek. He was kind of my first teacher. He's one of the I wouldn't say maybe the fathers, but the first people that talked about functional movement, functional training, and holistic health. And in 2006, I went to San Diego to study with him, with his teachers. And then I did the second course in 2009. I was already inside my physical therapy studies. And then later on, I practiced. I tried to practice some acro yoga here in Israel and abroad. And around I think 2013, I think I started to practice with with the movement community here, with some of the teachers of Ido Portal back then. And it got developed, from here to there. What I was mentioning before, the ecological part. So last year I participated in a course about ecotherapy, and it really got me more and more to think that I really want to connect people to nature and to create this connection between movement, mind, and the outside world, the environment. So this is kind of, where I am right now.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing. I want to go to the beginning of what you shared, and I'm just kind of curious to hear a bit more. So you've mentioned that you experience a certain bullying, and you had a certain intuition to go and study martial art. And what was the effect of that on an emotional level? And did it had an impact on that aspect of your life?
It had a good effect, I can tell. Not just the fact that I became, let's say, more maybe capable or stronger or felt more confident by myself, but in this dojo that we were practicing together, training together, we had a kind of community. So, even in my school and in my high school, we had this kind of group of people that we knew that we are together. And people knew us back then, they knew they knew who we are, and it was it was better, it was peaceful. There were times when I was younger, that actually, as I said, like some teenagers, they were a little bit older than me. They were like chasing me, and they one time they put me inside inside the bottom floor of the house and locked me there. And I remember that one of them even, as a game, but it wasn't a game for me as a little child. He took like a diving gun. This is a diving gun, something like that. And he just pulled it into my face, and I was like screaming, and I was really afraid of this. I was afraid to tell about that, even to my parents. I was scared to tell them because I was afraid that they will do something for me. They were threatening me that if I'm going to share it or tell someone, they're going to hurt me. So I was inside myself, and I felt that I have to somehow find a way to become stronger, to know how to defend myself. So this
How old were
was
you
kind of. Well, I think that I was about 10. I would say maybe around 10 years old, something like that. Yes, so maybe about fifth, sixth grade, something like that. And then after my parents got divorced, we moved to another neighborhood, and a big part of that, drama ended at this period.
Yeah. No, yeah, maybe you didn't expect that we will talk about something so personal, but I just find it so touching because, I think it's, very often, at least in the area that I work, I kind of talk and share like the impact of dance and movement, how it affected my life. And when I hear like such a, I have also a son, he's 7-year-old, so I can kind of, while you were talking, I could imagine how would I feel if that my son will go through such an experience, and just like how impactful it is to work with the body, and in how many levels it influences. As you said, like, okay, you gain skills, so it's like you have different physical capabilities. You also develop a certain confidence, but you also suddenly are embedded in a new community, so it completely transforms who you are, and it's like such a strong thing. So thank you for this sharing. Let's jump a bit in time, and I want to start with a kind of a certain fundamental question, because you've mentioned like movement, health, and well-being. So you kind of give us a bit of the definitions of what do you mean when you say like movement? What do you mean when you say health, and what do you mean by well-being, and like kind of starting from there?
Yes. Yes, absolutely. It's like it's a broad, very broad concepts. In each one of the terms are really, really like it's a large concept. But nowadays I more and more I think about movement in terms. I would say that I'm less performance oriented. I was never I don't consider myself as a professional mover, and I do maybe some kind of maybe medium to advanced stuff, some things like that. But the performers or the to take myself to the extremes, it's nice. Like it has some part in my practice and maybe in what I teach, but it's not the core of really what matters to me. What really matters to me is that at least in what I do. So nowadays I put more and more like emphasis on the longevity of my practice to see how my movement is actually supported and supporting my life, that is kind of integrated with my life. And I'm really interested not just in what I do in my practice or what others do in their practice. So I have this kind of distinction that I talk about between, I call it the practice effect or the exercise effect. It's what's happening when we are practicing this hour or 2 hours a day. But I'm more and more interested in how we live our life in general and how movement is integrated into our everyday lives. How much we walk, how do we perform simple transitions from the floor and up? What is happening in those time in between the movement sessions? So I try to look more at movement in the sense that um, how it is kind of a core component of who we are as human beings, not just what we practice or what we do with our bodies. This is where my current emphasis is. When I talk about or think about health and well-being, so I think also about emotional components, social components, psychological components, and all this kind of a more internal world, I would say. And as I said, this connection to nature. One of the things that I got from the ecotherapy course is thinking and you can see it in movement as well, is thinking in three directions, and they are all related to relationships, because I really believe that the health of the relationships in our lives is really the core of what's happening. So I have a relationship with myself, both physically and let's say emotionally and cognitively. It's like subjective relationships. It's my relationship with myself. And I look now, when I look at movement, I'm talking about healing the relationship with myself through movement, versus, let's say, abusing my body or trying to prove something or fighting against something or things like that. Now, it doesn't say that I don't work with challenges, but this is where I'm trying to come from. The second axis is the direction between me and you. It's the relationship between people. So it's the relationship with my wife, with my daughters, with my clients. And one of the shifts that I did in this kind of axis is that I see more and more, what I do here in this clinic. People don't just come here to, I don't know, to produce just results and, lift, heavier weights or things like that. I'm interested in building deep relationships with people through movement, through practice, through touch. And then the third axis is the relationship between myself or between man and the world or man and nature. It's, what's my relationship to the outside world, to nature? Both my physical relationship, how I move there or whatever, and my kind of, caring to the larger whole. So these three axes are really kind of fundamental to my thinking now.
So maybe we can maybe we can start with the first circle, the relationship between me, the relationship I'll cultivate between myself and my body, myself and my mind, and because that's also a terminology that I'm also using when I invite people to study with us with the movement lab. Is I say we help people to cultivate a relationship with their body mind. So can you tell me a little bit like what, like maybe, I don't know, maybe you can also share a little bit like what is a typical day in your life through that kind of like, where do you see that sentence manifest in your life, the idea of relationship with the body?
A typical day in my life, it's changing, but it's, let's say today I'm living kind of, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes walk from the beach of Tel Aviv. And I try to, like every morning, I know it can sound like, I'm having this kind of perfect routine or whatever, but I don't want to make the impression as if my life is perfect, or if I am perfect and everything is going, perfect in my life, it will not be sincere. Because I'm having many, struggles and challenges, personal challenges, which I'll be happy to share later, sure. But I try to start my day with some journaling in the coffee shop near the house, and then I do my first walk. I walked around near the beach. Many days I also swim in the sea. I really like it. I have this kind of, I call it meditative swimming, because I'm such a bad swimmer. So I'm swimming very slowly. And it's, nothing that I was training with teachers, and nothing actually helps, but it's okay. So I call it meditative swimming. I take it easy, and I'm not concentrated on the physical effort of it. On the other hand, I'm trying to focus on a slow motion, slow movements, and focusing on being in the water, in the sea, and my breath. And it's really beautiful. And then usually I see people. Usually I see, I would say, I don't know, 3, 4 people, clients per day. It's changing. I'm having around 6 to 7 online classes per week. So it's about one day, one class per day. And then I have my, my courses or my workshops, which are happening from time to time. During my day, what I really like to do is to be mobile and active. So I'm really interested in the role of human walking in our evolution. If you look at it anthropologically, it's really fundamental. I call walking the mother of all movements. So I'm really kind of interested in that. It's so simple. It's like kind of under our nose, and still many of us don't do it, or we have many other movement practices. But this fundamental motion of locomotion, of moving from place to place by foot, taking one step after the other. I think that, if we talk about health and well-being, it's an important core component. Now I can really feel that if I don't walk, and it doesn't matter what other practices I do in my life, but if I don't walk for about 15, even 20,000 steps per day, something is missing in my sense of well-being. And then in between, I integrate my practice. I usually train for about, nowadays, I would say between an hour and a half to 2 hours per day. And in between, I'm here at my house with my daughters, and this is kind of how a typical day of mine kind of looks. And you wanted to ask me something about how it's connected to the aspects of relationship to. to myself.
No, before what I wanted to get into, because I think that like when I think about the word relationship, then I think about a sense of negotiation, communication, and then I'm curious, like, then the body, it's like, this abstract thing, the body. What is the body? What is the language of the body? So I'm just curious, like, in which way what is the language that you use for yourself in that kind of realm? Because I think that it's like many people would, like, I hear very often the phrase like, yeah, listen to your body, or I'm in tune with my body, and I'm curious, like, what is your language around this idea of relating to the body, and what is the thing that you're cultivating? So there is the behavior that kind of, everything that you describe that happens, and then, like, how does it influence the internal dialogues that you have about that between you and your body, and what does it mean for you?
Yes. So I think that also in relationships, there is room and there is space also for kind of opposite qualities. So there are times, I divide times when I can practice. My practice can be very soft, and I would engage in really feeling and kind of listening to my body, listening to what it need to I don't know, to stiff areas in the body, and then I will work gently there, and with gentle stretches, or foam rolling or things like that. And it's kind of, I would say, I don't know, the inside of it, okay? But it's not the totality of it, because it's the other component is also important. Sometimes, I'm saying, okay, this is what's happening, but now I'm doing this, and I have my program that I want to work on, or something that I would like to work on, and I can change my attitude inside that. With that, I would say that there are some things that I'm not interested in. I'm not interested in kind of, I don't know, ruining my body, or intentionally exposing myself to injuries or things like that. No, not in my practice, and not with the students that I work with. Sometimes it can happen. Just I don't know, a month and some more than a month ago, I tore my biceps, in a kind of exercise that I did that I wasn't ready for, and it's happened. Okay, but it's not a kind of something that I have an intention for. So I'm trying to work more, I would say more, even when I'm kind of more challenging myself, but I'm working kind of with my body. So it's not just always listening. I don't do that, or just listen, and every time I'm doing something else. There is a room for that, but there is also room for a more structured practice that I do. And then kind of my body and my mind are oriented toward the structure that I decided that I want to work at.
Mm.
So yeah, there is a room for these two qualities, I think. And for
Yeah, and
me, it gives kind of a balance. It's a good balance. It feels good. It feels healthy for my personal
because yeah,
practice.
this is something that I'm really curious on. I think on the and I think that there's like many different perspectives and ways how to negotiate this tension. But it's exactly what you're saying, between kind of bottom up processes that you just let the body signals to guide you through what is needed to be done, and on the other hand, this top down approach that you're planning, and you have a certain idea and a certain goal. And so in your perspective with the clients that you've been working, and like, what do you think is like kind of a good ratio between these things when we talk about the desire to be more healthy? And let's define health for a moment. Feeling good in your body. I'm not talking about like not having cancer. I'm talking about, like, just that you feel good with your body. You're not limited with pain. You're available. Your body is available for life. So what is the good ratio between these two components, and how you address it when you meet a new client? Like, how do you negotiate that?
Yeah. Um, Something that I can say pretty, I'm pretty, I would say, Yeah, I can say it with more confidence. I can speak more from my perspective and my experience, maybe less about ratio, but more about kind of order of things. What I found is that usually when I start more with the what you said with the bottom up process, like in the beginning, like the preparation and everything, I give myself the time or I give my clients the time. For example, today I have a client here that she comes here to practice handstands, and she's kind of she likes the energetic stuff and she likes challenges and stuff. But she was a little bit sick, and in the beginning she said, okay, listen, I don't know if I can do anything today. Let's take it very easy, maybe some gentle stretches. And then I this is what I usually do with people like her or with myself. So the preparation and the beginning is usually I give more and more time to the what you said, the bottom up, the inside, listening, taking it easy, and then things kind of open up, and almost naturally it's easier to enter to the more, let's say, top down approach, or to the to the practice, to the sets, to what we would like to do regardless of how we feel. So in terms, I don't know exactly about ratios. I think it's changing. It depends, it's individual, but I would say that the order of things, from what I found, it's really when we it's like yeah, it's like with range of motion. You and I discussed a few weeks ago about range of motion. um, if you kind of for not for 10 years old gymnasts, but let's say for people like in our age or stuff, if you start very aggressively with the range of motion, even the body will resist. It's like a physiological response. We have the stretch reflex. If we try to work too intensively in the beginning, our body will resist, and then we'll try to work against resistance. The thing is to go gently in the beginning, and then it's like a gentle knock on the door and it opens. So I think in terms of the order of things, I would start this way from my experience. If it makes sense.
Interesting, yeah, because yeah, it makes sense. I think like that this is something that I'm also, as somebody who is like have, let's say, a relatively multidisciplinary background and practice, I really see how in different communities there's a very different ratios between these kind of approaches, to the extent that like in the dance world where I live now in Vienna, I would say that many of the dance teachers are focused, their entire focus is just on what does it mean to listen to the body. So that like that's the training. The training is has nothing to do with any plan. The training has nothing to do with any idea that I'm going. And for me, and I'm very much connected to training. I like to, like to structure things, and it brings a question about this notion of like guiding the body somewhere. Like why do we need to guide the body, or like what is the purpose of actually aiming for a certain specific outcome? But then it also comes, but then of course, then for me it brings the question like, is that sustainable? I don't know. There's so much data about, for example, how strength training helps older people to stay healthy. So like, and then like exactly like what is the but on the other hand, like if you don't have a listening practice, like it's also a bit like, how can you do sets if you don't have the capacity to listen to what your body is telling you? So it's kind of, as you said, like it needs to be intertwined. But I'm I do find myself, because of the culture I'm embedded in, a bit more leaning to that aspect, and I feel like in the dance world there's no let's say evidence-based knowledge on what does it mean to keep your joint healthy. And I wonder, like, because you also have the background as a physiotherapist, like how much in your practice you rely on, let's say, these kind of ideas and accumulated knowledge versus like your individual experiential knowledge with your body. Like and do you find sometimes contradiction between the two, or like the body tells you something but your mind tells you something else, and how to solve that kind of a conflict? It's many questions.
Yeah.
I hope it's clear.
Yes. Yes. I think that I actually I got what you said. Um, yeah. So there is a kind of what I call like I don't know, as lived experience. My experience as living in the body, the subjective as lived experience. And then there is, evidence-based knowledge and I don't know, protocols or things like that. I can say that I'm kind of, and this is something that I started to develop in my philosophical studies, and it's something that I try to practice and even teach right now. And it's the idea of being able to switch between perspectives, between points of view, and not even in my own training here or in my own practice, I call it like a human centric approach. So one client will come and I will look at the problem. I will see that the lens in which I have to look at the problem is proper biomechanic lens. If someone, I don't know, you torn the ligament, and so I will see the whole person. I will listen to the whole person, but maybe the approach or the intervention will be very focused and, I don't know, biomechanically oriented. On the other hand, I can meet, I don't know, someone else, and the approach will be much more, the psychological and social aspects will take much more place than the physical. So it's also the ability to be analytic and to be holistic, or to be analytic and to be artistic, and the ability to know how to read the research and to understand protocols, and I don't know, to understand how to build a training system or a training program, and on the other hand, how to allow myself to be intuitive and spontaneous. And I think that this is kind of challenging. It's also challenging for me. But what I find is that I try to adjust my point of view, depending on the context, depending on the current context that I'm working with, whether if it's with my body or if it's with other people. With that, I can say that, for example, something that I taught now in the course regarding range of motion. So I give the example of, let's say, if one person is trying to open the hips, okay, let's say in a lotus position, the limiting factors can vary from person to person. They can vary in the same person from one hip to the other. Now, if you take maybe a textbook, okay, you might see that, okay, these are the muscles that are stretched in this pose, and if you stretch them and open them, it will improve your pose. But the reality is not like that, even though it's written like this in a textbook, because we have many limiting factors that we have to understand. And if I feel in a certain pose that one thing is limiting me, I don't lie. This is what I feel that's stopping me, and I have to understand what's going on. So I like to work with this, metaphor. When I see people, I don't see them, and I have my textbook on or my research paper here or my evidence practice here. It's not between me and them. It's behind me. It's something that I can use. I can use it, but first I see the person, and I work with the symptoms. I work with the reality of what's happening. So I think that this is kind of how I try to formulate it.
Yeah, I think it also kind of like the words that I take from this from what you're saying is this kind of tension between the particularity of each individual case and the commonality between the cases, because I think that to some extent, when we like, at least I think that many people are attracted to the idea of like having a protocol, or like what is the right way to achieve something, and like how do you solve that problem? Or like, like I've just seen like a post that you made on Facebook about something like this kind of hypothetical question, like what is the best Pilates exercise for back pain? These kind of like general questions, because when you have a problem or when you have a goal, like you want to find the answer as quick as possible. But on the other hand, like as you said, like in any situation, there is a lot of parameters that are hidden in there, and I think that this is and also I think that at the end of the day, that like we coexist both as individuals and as a part of larger collective. So like we have these two qualities simultaneously, and I think that it's a little bit like it can be a challenging to satisfy the needs of a client or a student or somebody when it comes with a question. So I find myself in many situations, just when somebody asks me a question, they're saying like, look, it's too much of a general question to give you an answer that will actually relate to you. But so when you have somebody who is coming, like what is the degree of specificity that you need to dive into in order to analyze the situation to give like a good advice? Because you can also get lost in the details. So like when do you not say like, okay, look, I've seen enough, and now I can make sense of what I'm experiencing, seeing, versus like the prescription of like what's the symptom, take the pill next. So like how much specificity is needed in your work?
Yeah. It reminds me, a few days ago, I went to visit my sister, and then her husband, he told me, listen, something happened to my scapula, to my muscles, to my muscle there. It's tight and it's painful. What should I do? And my first intuition was to say, okay, listen, I have to make an assessment. We have to see what happened. Tell me when it started, and make all this kind of, let's make a kind of physical therapy assessment. And then I say, okay, it's true that, I can get more and more specific, as you say. And when people come to my clinic here, I try to get specific, to the point that I see that it's valuable. This is the key. But on the other hand, with my brother-in-law, with the husband of my sister, I don't know if it's brother-in-law. Yeah,
I'm not sure.
No, it's not brother-in-law. Brother-in-law is the brother of my wife. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So
Never mind. Never mind. But I said, okay, but I can, it's a different, it's maybe something else, but I can still help him, because I see what's happening, and I can tell him, okay, listen, I don't know exactly, but from what you're saying, try maybe to work with it with some tennis ball. And, I got the sense that it's something muscular. So maybe it wasn't the most specific, and it wasn't a professional physical therapy meeting, but I could still provide some value, So I would say that even that is something that I try to see how I can be more flexible with my attitude and attune myself to what's happening, to who is coming. So sometimes, people come here, and I kind of I can catch kind of fast what's going on. And many times people come here and I don't get what's going on. And I tell them that, come to an assessment, we will see, and I will see how I can help. Many times I kind of, we start with a kind of program, or with some session, with a few sessions, and then we see if it's the right direction. Sometimes it's not the right, or it's not accurate. I don't pretend to have all the answers. But I try to, to see what will fit the people, that will fit the individual. That's the thing.
And did you already develop some strategies? Because you share that you work with people and you are interested in cultivating kind of more longer and meaningful relationship, and also to help people to develop their relationship with their bodies. And I think like, if I kind of really pull to the extreme, So if I want to encourage somebody to really own the relationship with their body, so if they come and ask me, hey, I have this problem, I say like, look, the answers are within you. Go, listen, search, explore. There's nothing I can tell you that will be really right for you. And on the other extreme, I come and I say like, the best thing to do right now is this and that. And I'm questioning like what is the way that maybe you have found useful to, in the process of not just solving the problem or the goals, but in this overall kind of let's say underscore of supporting the cultivation of relationship for others. For yourself, okay, you already have it, but what do you do when somebody comes, I don't know, they have pain, maybe they are not person who is so moving in their life, so how do you balance that and guide them into a place that at the end you feel like they could become more independent, they could become more autonomous in managing this complex relationship? If you enjoyed the conversation so far and found it meaningful, please consider to share the episode with others and to click the like button. These small actions might seem meaningless, but they are the fuel that helps the podcast project to move forward. Your attention and time is highly valued, and we would love to hear more about the insights you might have from listening to this episode. And please consider to subscribe to the channel to be notified for all future uploads.
Yeah, I would say that one of my aims, I would say, is to empower people and help people to become more, I would say, more independent regarding their bodies, regarding their movement system, and regarding their confidence with their bodies. It's one of my aims. With that said, many times, let's say, in my handstands classes, these are very structured classes. I build the programs, the sessions in advance, and we do this kind of stuff. We do a kind of systematic work. Because it's hard to really to advance in this practice if you're not using it, doing it correctly with a process, with a program. And still, I give people some place to choose, and to choose between stuff, to choose some parameters. I'm not imposing on them everything. It's not just, I say, you do. In what you described before, I think I thought about it, and I thought, I don't remember that I've never used this kind of, saying that on the one hand, saying, listen, I have nothing to teach you or to give you, go research for yourself and find the solutions for yourself. And on the other hand, I don't, even when I'm kind of confident in what I'm saying or seeing, I don't tell people, okay, listen, here is the best practice. This is the best. This will give you the results. Do that, exactly that, and you will get there. So I'm more, I would say, swimming in the middle. But in my general philosophy, I think that, really empowering people to be more kind of independent. And independent, it doesn't mean that they are not connected or that they don't need instructions or teachings or whatever. But that, for example, I will tell you a story. Today I was speaking with one of my clients, here, and he started with kind of severe back problem, and we got to a phase in the classes that now he feels kind of okay with the back, and I wanted to see, okay, what's next for you, because I can, we can develop and we can go further, and after our sessions, I write down what we did in the session. I send him some photos, and then he has like his own kind of practice based on what we do here. And he told me today in the morning when we talked by phone, he told me, I want to tell you something. I'm not doing exactly what you write me after the sessions. I kind of mix things, and I see how it feels to my body, and I take from there. And I was very happy to hear that. He said that he was like apologizing that he doesn't do exactly what I kind of write, or what I prescribe, so-called. But I was very happy to hear that. And I said, okay, listen, it's a good step. that you can take what I'm giving you and kind of, integrate it and take it and, and keep going with it and be persistent with it. So I think that this is a good thing to help people, to empower people to be more they have this kind of self-efficacy that they can with their body, because it's very much missing. I'm having this, sometimes I'm thinking about this, if you look at the educational system, um, in large part, it is based on, that students is there to learn what the teacher has to say or to follow orders. Even if you look at the work culture, the dominant work culture is like, it's like in big part, it's like, obeying orders or something like that. People say things and we do what they say. So sometimes I'm calling this mindset, if you go to a class or whatever, so if I'm entering into the student's mindset, the sentence that is there all the time can be, okay, it's like waiting to be told what to do next. Waiting to be told what to do next. Now, there is room for that. I'm not against it, but I don't think that it's good that it's all there is, It's not good that it's all there is. It's just waiting to be told what to do next. So I don't know if it answered your your question, or
No, I think it's I practice on one hand, like I'm practicing in the last 8 years Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So there I'm a student and things are very structured, and also the practice to some extent is pretty goal oriented, or like it's clear why you do things. And on the other, I'm a dancer. That's my main profession. And when I teach dance, contemporary dance, and that's maybe something like that relates to the particularity of contemporary dance, I tell people like contemporary dance, there is no form. So you need to ask yourself when you experience yourself dancing. So there's already like, if you don't take responsibility, you would never be able to, let's say, own the practice. So when I teach as a teacher, I feel like that it's already kind of embedded in the proposition. Okay, I can be teaching something very specific, but it's obvious that I don't give you the answers because I cannot know for you when you will experience yourself dancing. So it's already kind of, there is a certain balance there. But I think that when we talk about stuff like health, and when we talk about stuff like well-being, and I think like, there is a certain already kind of in the way society is structured and how we are specialized in different areas, and like, how we develop this kind of codependency that, like, I'm here surviving because of your skills and you're helping me because of your skills. So then we kind of, we end up in a situation where there are people who are kind of more movement body experts and many people who are completely not. And then when you need to address something like health, or I would say before health, maybe like pain and suffering, then I think that there is something very tempting about, helping someone to overcome their problem. I know my wife is a dentist. People come because they have pain in the teeth and they just want it to stop. But when it comes to these kind of movement systems, I feel like it's very tempting, but also like, it really can rob the person from the real gems of diving into the deeper questions that eventually might lead to a more sustainable answer. Because I think like at the end, we have to, maybe the only difference that I feel between myself and somebody who is not training is not that I have less pain or discomfort, it's just that I have a bit of a more refined experience around that. And I don't know if it's something that you agree or not, because I don't know, are you also confronting pain, challenge, injuries, or you really managed to find a system where you are very sustainable around it? You just shared that you had something with your bicep, but I don't know how common it is for you.
Yeah. It was kind of an acute injury. It's not something that is usually happening to me. But I would say, I'm not immune to anything. It's clear to me that I'm experiencing kind of relatively, ease of movement. I feel that my body is generally open and light, and it's working nicely for me. With that said, sometimes I do experience pain on almost a year ago. I suddenly started to feel the symptoms of the sciatic pain that I had 20 years ago that I was telling you about. And it came from nowhere. It wasn't something that is even related to my movement practice, because I didn't do anything special. It started to appear. Now, I don't know, I can't tell for sure, I can't say for sure, but I suspect and I believe and I can get the sense that it was related to a serious kind of stress that I was dealing in my life in that time, in my personal relationships here, and it was impacting something. And sometimes, and then I thought about it, let's say this kind of back pain, the sciatic pain that I was experiencing, it reacts very clearly to movements or to biomechanical changes, but it's not necessarily the source of it. And I thought about the example of sinusitis. This is how you say sinus, when you have this accumulation of liquids in the sinuses inside the skull. So it's really painful when you move your head, when you do movements, you feel it. In different movements, you feel it more, and in other movements, you feel it less. It reacts to biomechanical changes, but the source of it is not biomechanical. It's kind of, I don't know, inflammatory or something like that, viral or whatever it will be. So many times it's the same here. As I said, I torn the biceps. It's kind of, I would say maybe it's painful, but it's a simple injury. It's not, I did something. It was some kind of leaning that I did on the bar that I wasn't, it was new for me, and it was a high load very fast, and it happened. But it's kind of, it's a simple injury, even if it's intense. But many other things, even for me, I can be, let's say my nerves, I don't know, my sciatic nerves, my hamstrings, my posterior chain is really open, flexible, and elastic. And all that I teach about it is kind of, okay, it's in a sense, it's embodied in my body. And still, I can have these symptoms because movement is not the only picture. It's not the totality of things. And today we know, it's not just me know, but there is a clear relationship between psychological issues, stress, and then the immune response. What's happening with our immune system is really complex, and it's fascinating, but it reacts to stress, and it can elevate the experience of pain. It can elevate inflammation. So I'm not immune to that. But I would say that because of my movement practice and because of my, I would say, range of motion, it's easier for me to keep functioning, let's say, in comparison to what was happening 20 years ago when I was really stiff. So my overall functioning, my everyday life can still be better, even though I'm having this kind of, pain or symptoms.
Yeah, I have two questions. Let's start with the first one. First, I really like this differentiation between like analyzing the what triggers the symptoms, but at the same time keeping the curiosity that it might not relate to the cause. But are there any things that you could really categorize that the cause is biomechanical, or biomechanics is mainly like what helps us to analyze the specificity of a potential injury? Like, okay, we can see that the ligaments here is too loose, but are there real like moments where you would say like, yeah, the cause of the problem is rooted in biomechanics or not?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, as I said, many times you can see that what's happening, if it's related to symptoms or even to simple difficulties in performance or in whatever. It has biomechanical components, and if you I would say relate to that in the right way, you will get good results. Absolutely. But I think it's related to what I said before, that it's important, I think, to know which kind of glasses to put in each situation, which point of view to use in each context. And it's so it's clear, let's say, for example, that in sciatica and in this kind of nerve root irritations, there is an inflammatory component to it. I would share with you an example, okay? A few weeks ago, a client came to me, and she had a full torn on her supraspinatus muscles. It's one of the stabilizers muscles of the shoulder joint, one of the rotator cuff muscles. So she said, okay, I was working, nothing. I was playing basketball on my daily basis, on a regular basis, and I'm working in a pharmacy. Nothing special. From time to time, I started to feel some pain in my shoulder, and it got worse and worse and worse until I couldn't move my arm at all, almost at all. I went to do an ultrasound imaging, and they showed a full thickness torn in my supraspinatus. And then she went to some people, and they tried to strengthen the surrounding muscles and do things like that, and it only got worse. Now, when I saw her, I listened to the story, and she told me that she was experiencing a high stress in this period. They had something in work. She was working from 5 a.m. in the morning almost until midnight for 2 months at that time, plus some stress in the family and things like that. And there wasn't any kind of injury. It's not like my biceps torn. It was a clear kind of biomechanical accident. And then I started to move the arm and to see, and I started to think that I told her, listen, I think that the torn was there before what's happened, before your symptoms, and it was asymptomatic. And what you're actually having, what I think you are having, but you go to another orthopedic surgeon and to other tests to see if it's correct. I think you are having a frozen shoulder issue, which is something else. It's kind of situation when the capsule of the shoulder is getting very, very tight. It's also a situation that sometimes develops after acute stress for people. Still, not always, okay? But it was kind of, I thought that this is what's happening, that it's a case of a frozen shoulder, and the torn ligament, what was found in the ultrasound imaging, was actually there before. And after she went to an expert orthopedic surgeon, he looked at it and he saw and he said that's correct. It's a frozen shoulder issue. It's not your symptoms doesn't come from your torn supraspinatus, and it's a case when sometimes a ligament. It wasn't a ligament. It's the muscle, or the tendon of the muscle can be completely torn, and you have no symptoms. And then there is something else that is coming around it. So it was, for example, it was a case that it wasn't a simple biomechanic things, but in many other cases it's more simple. Again, what I'm saying is that the ability to switch between lenses, between points of view, I think this is the main thing.
The reason why I asked the initial question about biomechanics, because I feel like that, like it's obvious that you can see some injury, and then you say like, hey, yeah, look, it's obvious the load here is like very aggressive, and then like the tissue cannot take it. But I keep asking myself, like, why an injury happens when it happens? Because like like you can see many people who are like having very repetitive patterns, and then like, I don't know, and then suddenly one day in the same thing that they're doing, puff, the body says no anymore. And then you're asking like, so, and at the same time, the body has the capacity for self-healing out of very severe situation. There are evidence of people healing themselves with mental processes from fatal diseases like cancer. So then it really brings the question like, what actually happens in the moment where the body says, no, enough, stop, like, and is because as far as I see it, I feel like that biomechanics really helps me when I want to, let's say, execute a movement in a more efficient way, or to understand how to harmonize myself with the physical forces, or what is the best degree to stress a joint when I'm doing a certain martial art lock. But when it really comes to the notion of like of injuries, it feels for me as if, like, as you said, like the mental component are omnipresent in the body, and it's really difficult to isolate it. And still, I think that in many cases, like the way our health system is structured is really kind of to look for these clear cues, and in a way, like, and it may be even a bit of a bigger question, like, why what you're doing is really on the margins, in the sense of like, when you go to the typical physiotherapist, you don't get that kind of attention. And, maybe it's kind of structural limitation, money, economy, like it's a much bigger question, but it feels like that if we talk about health and well-being, it feels as if like, if you're not doing that, then you're not actually doing well health, and like you're not really diving into this topic with people, because it's very superficial to find this kind of, as you said, like quick answers that points to obvious thing. No, what do you think about it?
Yeah, I think it's correct, and it's it brings me back to this woman with this shoulder issue. After our first meeting, I just told her what I think from the assessment. We didn't have clear answers, but she went out from the clinic, and she told me, "Listen, I'm so happy. I feel that you saw me, that you felt me." And it brings me back to the component of the relationship, and it's not just the I don't know, the biomechanical expertise or my anatomical expertise. It's not that, believe me, there are people that are more expert than me in any of these of these domains, for sure. But I think that, as in, it's clear nowadays, it's clear in psychotherapy, and it's clear in every kind of relational work that we do with people. I believe that also in the medical professions, that maybe the biggest components that makes the difference is the kind of relationship that is created between people. If you now look at psychotherapy research, maybe they can compare these psychodynamic methods and cognitive behavioral methods and whatever. In the end, what matters most is the connection and the relationships and the trust, and what's happening between human beings. And I think that this is really a crucial component beyond the kind of attitudes or systems or ideologies that we are working from.
Yeah, no, I cannot agree more with that. Yeah, it's really, I see it also as a very, very, very fundamental aspect. That's why when I teach dance, I tell people, look, it's a physical practice, but it's a social practice and it's an artistic practice all at the same time. And you cannot extract one layers, because it's just happening simultaneously. So maybe we can jump kind of into the last perspective. We talked about kind of the relationship between me and my body, me and others, and maybe let's talk a little bit about the relationship between myself and the environment. And maybe just to start, like, what is your ratio between kind of like indoor training and outdoor training? Are you really trying to direct more of your time to train outdoor than being at home?
Personally, I would say that more than 90% of my time I practice outdoors. Yeah, almost. I would say in the last 2 or 3 years, the vast majority of my time is I practice outdoors with my clients. With a few of them, we start to do these processes together, and I intend to do more and more of that later on. Absolutely. Um, and I really find it, you know, it's really, it's not just doing the same things that I can do in my studio, just to do it outside. I can do that. But there are so many other components. The external environment is much more dynamic. Even if you look, lately I was thinking about this term. I called it domesticated movement. We kind of domesticated our movement. If you look at it, the majority of it is inside studios with walls and with machines, and everything is very domesticated. And even if you look at simple, sometimes I'm looking at simple, let's say, balance exercises. Okay, so we try to tell people, okay, stand on one leg and don't move and focus on one point. And it can be nice, okay, on a certain level. But if you go outside and you are standing on different surfaces, and you look and you see the leaves moving and the trees moving or the clouds moving, everything is dynamic, and it's a totally different practice. So I'm very interested in that, in like I call it rewilding movement. Um, it's not just moving like the prehistoric man and to try to emulate what they did. Yeah, there is a place to maybe to take it, to get some inspiration from that. But I think that the connection, if we look at how we evolved as human beings, how our brain evolved, how our movement system evolved, how our vestibular system evolved, the visual system evolved, etc. You see that movement in nature, and especially, as I said, locomotion and walking and migrating in nature, was a big part of it. And today we are very kind of, many of us are alienated from that aspect. And I think that it's also, by the way, it's very also important, not just to what it gives us physically or movement wise, but it has a deep healing capacities emotionally, cognitive, mentally, and even at the social and cultural level.
Yeah,
levels.
I
Yeah.
really like this the term you're using, like with domesticated and like rewilding movement. And it's funny because I'm teaching contemporary dance, and a lot of time is spent on moving on the ground. What in the world of contemporary dance is called flow work, and I think that it has certain connection to developmental movement, but also many of the things we teach are also like really like kind of culturally a cultural product and not let's say natural product. And for many people there is a certain sense of like that there is something very organic about moving on the ground, and like like becoming softer and moving smooth on the ground. But when I think about it, for me it's like it's the most domesticated form of movement from that perspective, because it really relies on these very smooth straight surfaces. Try to do flow work on, I don't know, in the mountains. It's like the most horrible experience you can have, like trying to slide on a natural environment. And I think that it's interesting, like to think, and I don't know, because me personally, I really feel that effect. If I'm being honest, I really feel that my movements are domesticated, and when I move in the studio, I can feel myself extremely virtuosic, free, full of expression. And then when I translate it, even just on kind of on a grass or something that is not that limiting, I really feel how many of my movements are depending on these flat surfaces. And I do wonder.
It's not, if I could, yeah, if I could just
Yeah, of course.
say something about that. it's not, I didn't say that it's bad or a negative thing that we domesticated our movement. What I'm trying to point to is that I think that that still we are missing something if it's the whole thing, if it's become the totality of what we can do. Or, you know, that's the thing. So it has a place. Let's say, for example, you mentioned flow work, okay? I'm not an expert in flow work, but I have some experience with that. And again, as someone who works with, I would say, functional mindset, and as a physical therapist as well, I see a lot of functional value in floor work. And why? Because it's full of transitions. Transitions from standing to sitting to lying down on the belly and to the back to supine lying and to twisting and to make yourself to train yourself to be efficient in transitions, and it has huge beneficial functional benefits for people. This is why I teach aspects of it here as well. You know, even though I'm not a dancer, but it has huge functional benefits. It's great in my opinion. What I'm saying about the domesticated thing is that I think that we miss something important for our physical, you know, emotional, mental well-being at all these levels if we don't open up our movement and practice and connection, physical connection to the natural world.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, like first, you know, I didn't take it as kind of like a dichotomy of like this is good, this is bad. I already kind of felt that you're not a dichotomical thinker, but thank you for the clarification. For me, I think like where it meets me is kind of it pulls me into a certain fundamental questions. It's like how do we conceptualize nature? And, you know, like there is the romantic attitude that will say like, you know, like everything that is like natural is healthy and better, and like you want to be healthy, you have to find the most natural way how humans been evolved and move. But on the other hand, you know, there is this perspective of, you know, like the devouring power of nature, and, you know, like human being in our entire evolutionary legacy have attempted to find solution for the catastrophic implication of nature, you know, from the idea of granary up to, I don't know, like weather prediction, whatever. So there is a tension there, you know, like, and I think, like, as you said, like maybe it's a matter of balance, because, you know, like obviously when I move in the studio, it's much more predictable. So I'm not exposed to the risk of, I don't know, twisting my ankle or like just hitting my knee on a very sharp stone. And then you can say, hey, it's a much better environment to practice movement. You're not exposed to all these dangers. On the other hand, something about the you know, just the fact that the floor is flat and our bones are not flat and has already a certain implication. And it's an interesting thing. So maybe you kind of, maybe you can walk me or inspire me and the audience that are listening a little bit to like what are the things that you do outside, and also like, do you differentiate between like urban environment and like really like nature, like and like how does that, what role does that play? Because you live in Tel Aviv, like, and I know that like in 5 minutes you can be in the ocean, and then you can say, hey, I'm in wilderness, I'm in this big body of water, but I can also train in the park, and then it's kind of a combination between kind of domesticated and wild environment. So what are the things that you do outside, and like how do you make sense of this difference between urban and really natural nature, let's say?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So really, since I live in Tel Aviv, I live in the city, and Tel Aviv is kind of it has its own you know, green areas, nice green areas, and we have the sea as well for sure. So I don't. It's not that I'm in you know, full on natural raw natural experiences on a daily basis. So most of my outdoor practices and time is spending here in the city in different areas. And you know, one of the things that I try to do, let's say, even for me, even, you know, just walking in the streets of Tel Aviv, sometimes I add little things, you know, they are not my strength or handstands or technical practice, but let's say I integrate. I try to I try to integrate my steps with my breath, with my breathing, with the pace of my breathing. Or if I'm listening to the music, so I match the steps with the beat of the music and my breath. Sometimes I can walk. This is something that I was curious about lately. It's called the internal navigating system in the brain. How we can navigate where we are, even if we don't see where we are. So I would take in the street, sometimes a few steps with my eyes closed to see if I reach from one place to the other. And it's all happening in the city. When I'm standing in the crossroad, let's say if there is a red light, many times I would try to integrate some gentle movement. I don't call it, it's not an exercise. I try to differentiate between what I call exercise effect. Let's say, I don't know, if I go to the gym now and I do 5 sets of weightlifting for I don't know, for my legs, then there will be an exercise effect. My muscles will grow and I will get stronger. I will have to rest and adapt and all this, cycle. But there is another thing that is, I call it, movement stimulation, motional stimulation. It's not exercise effect, but it's it's the rich kind of, and people like Katie Bauman and thinkers like her talk about it a lot. It's the richness of movement and emotional stimulations that is very healthy and important for our body, that are not exercise related. They are not intensity related. But it's just, the gentle mobility of the joints, things like that. So I try to integrate that inside my walking in the city. When I practice outside, so it really depends. Sometimes I practice closer to the ocean. Sometimes as I said, I can do things that I do inside, but I do it in another environment. And sometimes, let's say lately, I started to work more and more with myself and with two of my clients to work on trees. So we climb trees, not to the extreme, but just to feel the texture, what can be done there, things like that. And it's working very well. People are opening to that. They're looking for that. So this is kind of, what I'm doing at the moment, kind of.
Yeah, that's something that I definitely feel there is a side of me that is really curious about that, and maybe kind of living in Vienna, and I was born like you in Israel, so for me, like I still, after 13 years, I didn't adapt it to the idea of being outdoor in winter. So there's a certain limitation about that, but it's definitely inspiring to hear your thought and how you address it. And yeah, I think like we are kind of coming almost to the end. And even though that there were some more topics I wanted to open up, but it's always good to leave something for future meetings. I thought to maybe give you some time to connect the listeners to your work, and since you're also offering some online work, it might be also relevant for people who are curious, and also like to your in-person practice and how people can find you, and kind of what is the ecosystem of your work now that could be experienced further.
Yeah, thank you. So most of my offerings are kind of local offerings. I work here in Tel Aviv, in Israel. My online classes are open to all, so everyone can join. I have as I said, 6 classes per week. Three of them are more handstands oriented, and it's working very well. The people are truly progressing with that. And I have another range of motion class, which is more centered around range of motion and mobility, things like that. I have one therapeutic or restorative class that is more calm and soft and relaxing. And I have another kind of functional movement class that is filled with things like transitions, balance. I called it using strength in a function in emotional situations, etc. So it's one a possibility. And I also, I work with people one-on-one. If it's people from abroad, it's possible to work online and to meet if there are specific issues or things that I can help with. It's also, of course, possible. Nowadays, my main channels of communication is my newsletter, but it's written in Hebrew, and I'm now thinking about a way to start to translate it maybe to English as well. This is where most of my thinking and work is, you know, is made now. And it's also possible to follow me on my Facebook page and on Instagram. I'm not very active on Instagram, but it's possible to, to see some of the stuff that I do there as well.
Yeah, I will put everything in the show note. Just kind of to conclude, I want to say something that is kind of maybe a line for a future conversation, and because I think like many of the things that you're saying and sharing, or many of the things that you shared here, they kind of very resonated with me. But at the same time, I feel like you're embedded in a very different discourse than me. And it made it kind of, during the conversation, float to these thoughts of like, that kind of maybe relates a bit to theory of minds. Like, what would it be now to experience the world through your body? Which on one hand, like there's many things that I kind of really resonate with the idea, but still I would phrase them differently, or they would, in the environment in which I discuss them, people name them differently. And like, what is the effect between how we speak about those things and how it eventually materializes in our experiences? And I think it was very inspiring to see that there is very different ways how to phrase things than how I'm used to. And again, I thank you for your contribution, and I hope that also the listener would enjoy this conversation. So thank you again for coming, and until the next time.
Sure. Thank you very much, Matan, for what you're doing and for, inviting me for this discussion.
If you want to see more precious and insightful moments, make sure to check our short clips playlist. To see longer interviews, check out the full episode playlist just below it. And to be notified for all future videos, click the subscribe button and don't forget to hit the notification bell. See you on the next episode.